What's up, guys? So in case you missed it, last night for the first time they showed us some footage of the upcoming League of Legends fighting game, and we didn't really get a lot to work on. We got like 2 seconds of footage. Here it is, but it looks kind of cool. And then we got a little bit more footage here in this sort of behind the scenes developer interview. So all we really know about the game so far, it's being developed by the same team that made Rising Thunder, which was a fighting game a few years ago, and these are also the same guys who made the GGPO net play system. So we can be pretty confident the game is going to have good online if it's made by the GGPO guys, but other than that, we don't really know much. And the only characters they've shown are Jinx, Katarina, Darius, and Ahri. So what I'm going to be doing today is we're going to be running through the 10 League of Legends champions that I think would fit really amazingly in a fighting game. So if you're a fighting game guy and you don't know much about League, this could maybe give you a preview of what some of the characters that will end up being in this fighting game will look like. But if you're a League guy and you don't know much about fighting games, then maybe this can be sort of an intro to some of the mechanics that are more common in fighting games, so you can have an idea of what to expect when your favorite characters end up being ported over to this new fighting game. So let's jump right into the list. So the first character that I want to talk about here is Zed. So Zed to me is such an obvious choice. I think he would be perfect in a fighting game. In case you don't know how he works, he is a melee assassin, but his signature ability allows him to set up a shadow clone that will mirror all his attacks, so you can get big extra damage this way. Plus, it can even be used as a teleport. If you set up the clone, you can swap places with it and use that to get across obstacles or to cover space quickly, or to mix up the opponent because they don't know where you're going to go. They don't know when you're going to use the teleport. So there are so many possibilities there. Teleports in fighting games have a long history, going all the way back to Dalsim in Street Fighter 2, but there's been some crazier things like Venom in Guilty Gear, who can teleport to his projectiles, use that to set up pressure and mix-ups. But I mean, the idea of a character who basically is his own assist and can set up mix-ups for himself that way, I don't think that's ever been done before. And the idea of being able to create a clone both for mix-ups and for increased damage is very, very exciting to me. Next up, another character I think would be great in a fighting game is Lux. So Lux is a long-ranged mage. She can keep you at arm's length and hit you with her different spells and projectiles that she can throw at you. She also has an amazing ult, which is a super long-range beam that does a grip of damage and will catch people even if they're running away from you halfway across the map. You can still explode them with this. She also has pretty good utility with a stun and a shield that she can apply to herself and her teammates. So to me, Lux seems like definitely a projectile-focused zoning character. Think Frieza from Dragon Ball FighterZ or Hilda from Under Night In-Birth. These characters keep you at arm's length using projectiles, convert them into damage, and frustrate you, make you desperate to get in. This is a really fun style of character to play, in my opinion, but the big downside is once you get in on them, they really fall apart. So a high-risk, high-reward character like Lux, I think it makes a lot of sense. Next up, I want to talk about Lee Sin, the Blind Monk. So Lee Sin is a melee-focused brawler with a lot of mobility. He can hit opponents with projectiles and then travel to them. He can teleport to allies and apply shields to them, apply debuffs to the enemy. Like I said, he's got a lot of mobility, and all his attacks have follow-ups built in, which makes him very fighting game-like to me. I would compare him to maybe Enkidu from Under Night In-Birth. Another sort of monk-type character with a lot of follow-ups built into his attacks. He's also kind of similar to Iron Fist, another very mobile character with a lot of long attack strings, lots of follow-ups, lots of ways of buffing himself. So I think all this put together would make a very exciting character to play for people who like rushdown, mobility, and oppressive offense. Lee Sin, I think, would be really neat. Next up, another character that would be really awesome is Annie. So Annie is a fire mage, another ranged mage here. She can spit fire at you, stun you with fire, do big damage with all her different spells. But the big thing that sets her apart is her pet bear, Tibbers. This guy is a beast. You can control him independently, move him around the map, use him to tank for Annie, or just to deal big damage to the opponents. It's a really cool mechanic that I think would work great in a fighting game, kind of similar to characters like Carl Clover from BlazBlue or Chaos from Under Night. Characters where you have a second sort of miniature character that you can use as your puppet, move them around the screen and use them in combos and setups. I love characters like this. They tend to be very hard to play, but really rewarding in the hands of a skilled player. I think that would be a really cool design for Annie as well. Next up, let's talk about Udyr. So Udyr is a pretty sweet character. He has 4 different stances that he can transition into, which is pretty unique. He's got the turtle stance, which gives him bonus to HP and shields. He's got the tiger stance, which gives him some increased attack power and attack speed. He's got the bear stance, which makes him move faster and lets him stun the enemy. And then he's got the phoenix stance, which lets him use some fire attacks and put an aura around himself to damage the enemy. So, I mean, this would just be amazing in a fighting game, I think. There are so many ways they could do this creatively, like maybe the turtle stance allows him to have super armor on some moves, whereas like the phoenix stance lets him use projectiles. The bear stance gives him increased movement options, maybe he can only air dash if he's in the bear stance. Something like that I think could be really cool. Obviously, he compares a lot to maybe a character like Gen from Street Fighter 4, who has the mantis stance and the crane stance, which completely revamps his moveset. I don't think they would go that far with Udyr. They would probably just make them like passive buffs rather than completely replacing all their moves, but it's a really cool concept. I think it would work really well, and I would love to play as Udyr in a fighting game. Another character who would work great in a fighting game is Riven, and apparently according to the developers, they were even thinking about fighting games when they were designing sort of the way that she plays. Her primary attack is a 3-part sword slash that moves her forward, so you can use this to do damage or to chase down the opponent. And what's really cool is you can weave in different attacks. You don't just have to do the 3 attacks in a row. You can change up your combos to optimize your damage depending on the situation you're in, which makes her really fun and rewarding to play. And it's just fun to chase opponents down with having great movement, great damage, some pretty good CC. Her ultimate also reforges her broken sword, which lets her do some new moves as well as having greatly increased damage. So it's pretty badass. I think right off the bat this reminded me of like Genjiro, because he's got that big 3-part Rekka sword slash. Pretty awesome, and he can use that to move forward as well. But I also think Dante from Marvel 3 is another good comparison. You know, he's a character where all of his moves kind of revolve around weaving in and out different attacks in his combos, and he's even got a power-up super which unlocks some new moves for him, so I think the comparison is there. But either way, I think Riven would be an amazing character and is a very obvious inclusion. A less obvious inclusion, who I still think would be really cool, is Leona. So Leona is this big, huge tank wearing a full set of armor with a sword and shield, and she's pretty amazing. She can get in on you pretty well with this gap closer she has. She can hit you with her sword from far away, and that will instantly teleport her next to you. So I think a character like this, it's pretty rare to see in a fighting game and have them actually be female. A big, tanky, brawlery female character is pretty rare. An only example I could think of is like Makoto from Street Fighter. She's this big, slow-moving, high-damage character, but similar to Leona, she can also close the gap really quickly when she needs to. If the opponent's not expecting it, you can get in there and start applying the massive damage. Another thing about Leona is that she does have some ranged attacks as well. She has some spells that hit far away. So this maybe makes me think of a character like Broly in Dragon Ball FighterZ. You know, he's this big buff grappler. He wants to get in on you, but also he can fire projectiles and annoy you from far away with that. So a hybrid design like this I think would be really cool for Leona, and I think she would be great in a fighting game. Another support character I think would work perfectly is Thresh. So Thresh has this long chain with a scythe on the end. He can use it to pull in opponents and set up kills really well. He's just a fun character to play. He can really bully the opponent, keeping them off the person that he's trying to support or pulling them in to try to create a kill. He also has some supporting abilities like being able to give shields and a lot of cool stuff like that. And as for characters to compare him to, I mean, it's gotta be Ghost Rider from Marvel vs. Capcom 3. I mean, they're basically the same character. Just look at him. You know, Ghost Rider is really fun. He can keep you really far away with his long-range chain. I could imagine them giving Thresh like a ranged command throw. That could be cool too. I don't think they're going to give him a flaming motorcycle, but I mean, we can always hope, right? So Thresh, I think, would be a solid inclusion and definitely really fun to play. Next up, we've got actually my favorite champion in League of Legends, who is Ashe. So Ashe is a ranged character. She shoots this bow. She can use ice arrows to slow you down. She can bully really well with this arrow volley that can hit multiple targets. And she can fire this giant crystal arrow that freezes whatever target it hits, and it travels across the whole map. So we've had a variety of kind of bow and arrow based characters in fighting games before. The most recent one I can remember is the Ranger Killer from Power Rangers Battle for the Grid. I tend to enjoy these characters a lot. Another kind of deep cut here is Saki from Tatsunoko vs. Capcom. She has this giant gun. It's not exactly a bow, I know, but she can do one really cool thing where she uses a super and it loads her gun with this gigantic unblockable bullet. So this huge bullet comes out and you can even combo off it, and again the opponent can't block it, so it's very powerful. So this is just something that I thought about as like maybe a way they could implement Ash's crystal arrow. Maybe she spends a meter to fire it, and then whoever it connects with, she can get a combo afterwards. But I think Ash would be really great. Alright, and the 10th and final character I want to see in the League fighting game is Gnar. So Gnar is this cute little guy. He's like a little Mogwai type of thing, but instead of transforming into a gremlin, he turns into this giant hulking monster. So we've had transforming characters in fighting games before, like Necalli in Street Fighter V. You know, when he activates his V trigger, he gets all mad, his hair stands up, and a bunch of the properties on his moves change, and he generally just gets stronger. Dark Phoenix in Marvel 3 is another example. When she dies with 5 meters, she turns into Dark Phoenix, and she becomes super strong and hard to deal with. But what makes Gnar really interesting is I don't think we've ever had a character where the two versions are so different. So when he's small, he could be more of a projectile-focused character with a lot more mobility, but when he transforms, he's this big, lumbering Hulk bruiser character. So I think that's a really cool potential idea, and I would love to see it implemented in a fighting game. But guys, that's going to be it for the list. Let me know what you think. There's a ton of champions in League, and I'm sure a lot of them would make really amazing additions to the fighting game. So post down in the comments, who do you want to see? And what sort of expectations do you have for the game? You think it's going to be cool? Let me know what you think. I really want to hear what you guys have to say. So that's going to be it for the video. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.